Hey there, my friend, and welcome. This is the Building a Lifestyle Business podcast. This episode you're about to hear was an interview I recorded with today's guest not too long ago on another podcast. The content's just so relevant that I thought it was really important to share it, even if it's a little different than our normal format. So if you're a frequent listener, you'll notice some differences, but what I want you to focus on are the key takeaways because there are a lot of them. With that, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode from the vault.
Inspiring you to build the life of your dreams by teaching you how to create a career you love. This is the Job Lab Podcast with your host, Nick Murphy.
Hello, my friends. My name is Nick Murphy, and I am thrilled and grateful that you're choosing to spend some time with me today here on episode number 1 of the Job Lab Podcast. If you haven't taken a listen to last week's episode 0, I'm going to give you a quick recap. I'd encourage you to go back and listen to it. First of all, we talk about the format. I give you some insights into me, my story, my background, and what this show is about, what to expect, the kind of guests we're going to have, what you seek to get out of it. And I really want to remind everyone that regardless of where you are in your professional journey, this show can be for you. We're all different, right? Our interests and our needs vary. Our talents and our passions are all our own. But if you want to squeeze even one extra bit of satisfaction, one extra dollar, make one more meaningful contribution, reduce your stress level at work, or even improve your health and your personal relationships at home, I'm telling you, you've come to the right place. And I'm ecstatic to get started and introduce my very first guest. His name's Chris Dorris. He's a mental toughness coach that's worked with elite leaders in both business and athletics. And in my conversation with Chris here in just a second, we talk about his challenging background and how he was able to marry his passion and turn it into a lucrative and successful career. Then I asked Chris about how to get past some of our most limiting beliefs about what's possible in our jobs so that we can all experience our careers on our own terms. I was really curious what the most successful people he's coached all have in common between the ears and how just, the normal people like you and I can learn those skills and achieve some of that success for ourselves. And then we also introduced a little segment called Rapid Fire, where I get on-the-spot answers to all my questions from every single guest that comes on the show. So future guests, beware. But with that, let's get into the conversation with Chris Dorris. Welcome to episode 1 of the Job Lab. I'm excited. I'm honored. I'm really pumped up for you guys to hear what our very first guest, Chris Dorris, has in store for you today. Chris is a mental toughness coach extraordinaire. He's also a very good friend of mine and someone that was really impactful in my life, helping me between the ears really go from somebody who may have dabbled in professional football for a second to somebody who made a pretty good run at it for a while. So Chris, more than anything, thank you so much. It's great to have you here.
Nick, I totally appreciate the invite. It's an honor to be on your podcast, first of all. And it's a bigger honor to be your first guest. And thank you, man, because you're giving me another opportunity to serve and to fulfill my life's purpose, which is to help people close the gap between how their life is and how they'd prefer it to be. So thank you, man.
You are crystal clear on what you want. You're crystal clear on what you do with your life, what your intentions are, who you want to serve, how you want to be. But it hasn't always been that way. I want you to share a little bit with the audience just about your story, how you came to be Chris Dorris, mental toughness coach, and not just Chris Dorris from Philly.
What do you mean? Remove the word just Chris Dorris from Philly. That's come on, man. You play for the Birds. You can't put just in front of just from Philly. But
congratulations on the Eagles Super Bowl, by the way. Let's just get that out of the way. Congrats to the Eagles.
Right on. Roger that. I appreciate that. I'm still celebrating. I got to tell you, if you ask me the question, what are you most proud of in life? One of my very top answers would be that for whatever combination of reasons, I had the courage to decide after college to not just go take a job for money and to not just take a job because it was available. I had some good mentoring and I read a really good book right out of college, which is entitled Do What You Love, The Money Will Follow by Marcia Sinitar. And I thank God for that because I made the decision to take the advice of one of my favorite teachers in history. His name is Joseph Campbell. And his advice is so powerfully summarized in 3 words, and they are follow your bliss. So I didn't know what my bliss was, coming out of college. I just knew what I wanted my vocation or my career to be about, but I sure as hell didn't know what specifically it would be. And I sure as hell could never have predicted it would be what it looks like today. All I knew is that I wanted to help people. I wanted to help people upgrade the way they're using their lives, like for whatever reasons. And I know what the number one reason is, and I'll tell you what it is. I wanted to help people not settle. Like I wanted my career to be about helping people be in love with their lives. And career is such an enormous part of our lives. We spend so much time in our jobs, right? That my mission in large part became about helping people choose vocations. And I love the word vocation more than job. I don't have a job, right? I don't have a job. I haven't had a job I'll never have another job. I just created a vocation, and I want everyone to feel the beauty of that too. And I'll tell you, so where it came from was my neighbors. You know, my dad died when I was really young, when I was 9. And after that, we struggled hard. And my house was full of suffering and pain and a lot of scarcity thinking, and a lot of fear and struggle. And it was in stark contrast to my neighbors who were this like remarkably joyous, older, retired couple who, you know, had created abundance for themselves and were celebratory and were happy and were always, you know, having guests stay for a week, and they're entertaining. And they were just really, it was the vibe of their lives and their home was so appealing and attractive that it was a huge influence, and maybe the primary influence for me to choose the path that I chose, and it was simply because I'm like, theirs is better. Like the way they're going through life is better than the way I feel we're going through ours. And if anybody could do it, we could all do it. So that was the impetus. So I came out of college, and I didn't know it. I just like wanted to help people and have their lives be on their terms. That's it. I didn't know what else that looked like. So I took a job that was available, but it was in social work. So it was helping people, right? So I knew it was on the path. It was in the direction of, but I knew social work was not going to be my, you know, it wasn't the long-term solution for me. It wasn't my sweet spot, but it was a great start. And this is cool. This is pretty cool, Nick, because this is all unpredictable stuff, right? And I'll interrupt the story just to say that like all these amazing, unpredictable things happen that are really beautiful, that change your trajectories. When you follow your bliss, when you have the courage to trust the organizing intelligence, I say, inherent within your passions, these remarkably unpredictable things occur for you. Like, I shattered my leg playing basketball during the 4 years I was doing social work. It didn't sound like a blessing at the time, but in retrospect, it was the best damn thing that could have happened because it had me get into golf. Got into golf, discovered how mental the game was, right? And then I discovered, oh my God, maybe this is my calling. Maybe this is the thing. Like I could marry my passion for psychology and the human spirit and human potential with my passion for sports because I was an athlete all my life. And I thought, there it is. There's the ticket. I wouldn't have predicted that it would have come from breaking my leg and then taking up golf instead of hoops. But okay, I'll take it. So that's when I moved out here to Arizona, got my graduate degree, and then started my practice. So as I was gradually starting my sports psych practice, I had to do stuff for money. So I was a licensed therapist. And at one point, as my practice was growing, I decided I'm just tired of working with people on their problems. And I want to do what I decided to do when I moved out to Arizona, which is work on people on their dreams, specifically athletes. So then I did it. I started the practice. Then the next unpredictable thing is some guy comes to one of these seminars that I'm doing for golfers on the mental game. And he approaches me afterwards and he says, I am the director of sales at a company called Insight. And I need you to come train my sales team. And I said, I don't I've never really done any work with corporations. And he goes, I don't care. Just do what you just did with these golfers because my sales team needs it. That opened up the door, man. To like, that's why I'm working now with companies like Apple and Salesforce and you know, and all these sales teams around the world and doing keynotes and like blogging and writing books and all this stuff that Nick, I got to tell you, could never have possibly predicted when I was 22 and said, hey, you know, after I broke my leg, let's go see if I can work with some athletes and help them do better by training their brain.
One of the things that I know from having worked with you and having known you for 15 years or whatever it's been now is that a lot of what you talk about and a lot of the things that stuck and resonated with me were around educating me and opening my eyes to the amount of negative conditioning that we're all taught. And it's not like you have to have bad parents to be taught negative conditioning. Or, I mean, I remember riding around in the car in our Astro minivan when I was a kid and talking, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? My brother wanted to be a fighter pilot and I wanted to play pro baseball at the time. And my mom said, well, you know, that's sweet, but what are you really going to do? And she didn't mean anything by it. Right. But like, right. But I'm cognizant of that when my kids say something that I want to to use negative conditioning, not to be negative, but just, well, let's be realistic. Talk about what realistic means, and in your work, that question that you ask people that kind of shatters that conditioning mindset.
You know, we can't blame parents because the hardwiring there is to protect, right? Is to protect the offspring. And part of their conditioning is that they want to make sure that they're happy. And part of their conditioning about what that involves is making sure that they can make a living. And we haven't all been trained to trust the organizing intelligence or the power. We'll just say the power that is inherent within our passions. You know, it's like, look at guidance counselors historically in high schools. They never ask you the question, what would you love? Like, what would be amazing? Hey, teenager, if you could create like wealth doing absolutely anything imaginable, what would that be? These aren't questions that get asked. It's like, hey, take a look at these books called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles or the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And then we're going to take this as interest inventory on the computer, and then you're going to get a printout. It's going to tell you what careers could be good for you. That's pathetic, man. The big question that I love to ask people in my coaching, in my life, is this. And I'm telling you, man, I can't think of too many bigger questions than this one. I can't think of too many more important questions to pause and take the time to reflect and to answer. And the question is this: how do you most profoundly want to use the rest of your life? And then you combine that question with this belief, which is, and you can make money doing anything. Then you start to get an answer to that. You create a response to that, and then you move towards that. Right. That to me, that's the ingredients. That's the protocol. That's the step-by-step process. Right. And it's only two to creating your life on your dreams is one, answer, what does perfect look like? And then move towards. Like, just move towards. Now, I know this sounds so ethereal and so theoretical, right? And it might sound to people listening like, that's bullshit. That's totally impractical. Really? I get that. Of course it does sound like that, because that's in contrast to the conditioning that would have your mom say, oh, that's really sweet, but like, really, what are you going to do to survive? Right? The conditioning, which is survival. So it sounds impractical, but I got to tell you this. I also studied in graduate school the attitudes of centenarians, people who are on death's doorstep, people who are 100 years old or older. And their answers to the question, what would you do different? Changed my life. And three of the most important questions, or three of the most popular, right, responses were: A, I would take more risks. B, I would slow down, appreciate how magical life is without me having to mess with it or do anything. Just appreciate the beauty of life. And C is I would be way less concerned about my own success and way more interested and committed to making a difference, right? Making a difference. They all say that. And take more risks. So it's like, I don't want to go to the end of my life. I don't want to arrive at the end of my life and go, what if I had tried? So really the message to summarize all that long-winded response is get an answer to the question. Think about how would you really love to spend the rest? If you could make money doing anything, because you really can. What would you love that to be? And because, when you're passionate about what you're doing, motivation is never a concern, right? Motivation and perseverance are not issues. They're spontaneous. They're automatic. And you're going to be great at it so you can make money at it.
There's a Gallup poll that they've been doing for about 30 years that measures employee engagement or really employee disengagement. And it's hovered, it ebbs and flows a little bit, but it's hovered around 80. I've seen it as high as 87% of people are disengaged at work. So play devil's advocate and ask questions that I'm sure some of these listeners are thinking is, I have to pay my bills. I can't, I would love to be a professional bowler. I would love to practice yoga all day, or I would love to just hit the golf course. And I'm good. I could make money at that, but that's not realistic. Like, how do I jump from what I'm doing to what I really love doing? So for those people, what's your advice? How do you begin that process? Because it's super overwhelming when you think about it, particularly if you're in a situation where you have never been conditioned or never been surrounded by people that tell you and prove to you through the way that they live their life that, man, this is what they were doing and now they're doing this and it is possible. So where do you start? How do you break down that first wall of, holy crap, this is nuts. I don't even know where to start.
Okay. The whole thing starts in your head. Before you take any action, you got to get your head right. And so you got to replace the thought I don't think this is possible with that minimum. Let's just explore this as a possibility. I'm not going to make any rash moves. I'm not going to make any hasty changes here, right? I'm not going to do anything stupid. I'm simply going to open up to the possibility that maybe I could have my life as I want it to be, right? It's just open up to that possibility, right? So that's question number one, or step number one. And then the next step is do anything. Like, when I started my practice here right before I met you, I was working 3 jobs. One was I was trying to start my practice, which was a job, and I spent a lot of time in it, but I was struggling because I didn't know where to get clients. And I was spending enormous amounts of time sitting at my desk, writing things and like just brainstorming and calling people and going to networking meetings. But then I had to pay the bills, right? So I get that. I had to pay the bills. And so what I did to pay the bills was I had 2 other jobs, and they neither of them were rewarding. They were just what I needed to do to survive, right? While I was exploring the possibility of creating what I really loved. And I would be a bold-faced liar if I didn't acknowledge that during that time, I had incredible fear, incredible doubt. It didn't unfold with effortless ease, but it wouldn't have unfolded, period, if I hadn't at least opened up to the possibility that I could really live my dream. And Nick, I'm doing that. You know what? I don't think I ever told you this, but when I was just entertaining moving out here to pursue the career in sports psychology, I contacted a bunch of experts in the field, like people who had written popular books on mental training and people who I would even see on TV, like working with professional golfers and professional tennis players and like the big names in the world of sports psychology. I actually reached out to them and was able to connect with them. And I asked them questions like, hey, look, I want to do what you're doing. So like, what do you got for me? Can you give me any guidance and advice? And I'm telling you, I'm not stretching this even the tiniest bit. This is part of what they told me. They said, man, you're choosing an uphill battle, brother, because there are a ton of people right now entering this field for an extremely limited number of opportunities. You're going to need to get your PhD, fact. And you're going to need to either be a professor at a university and start your practice on the side gradually, or you're going to need to be a clinical psychologist and start your practice on the side gradually.
Man, that's encouraging.
Exactly. Right. So I hung up. I'm like, damn, this doesn't sound like it's going to be easy, but I still wasn't discouraged because, again, I was trusting that my passion would get me there. And I'm telling you, that's the most, there's nothing in my life I'm more proud of than that, than having demonstrated the courage to trust that my passion would get me there. And I did what Joseph Campbell said was follow my bliss. So, in retrospect, so guess what? Do I have a PhD? Nope. No. Did I start a practice and graduate? Did I start am I a professor at university, gradually started my practice in sport? Nope. Did I become a licensed, well, actually I did become a licensed, I became a licensed therapist, but I wasn't a psychotherapist and started my practice gradually. I started my practice primarily. I started my practice immediately. In fact, I started my practice in graduate school. I was telling people as I was a waiter, right, during graduate school. And people are asking me, like, what are you up to? And I stopped saying I'm studying to become a sports psychologist. I started telling people who I'm putting a stake down in front of them. And I'm saying, I'm a sports psychologist. And they would go, wow, that's interesting. Do you work with kids? Because our kids just starting to play. And I'm like, yes, I do. And that's where my first clients came from.
That's great.
So the point of all it is that, don't wait, trust, magic happens when you follow your bliss. Magic happens. There is an unbelievably beautiful intelligence inherent within your passion. When you are in alignment with your passion, you are spirited, you are inspired, right? And you create outcomes that you could never have imagined. So throughout the entire course of the trajectory of my career, the one thing that's remained consistent is my commitment to trust. To trust that what I love can be monetizable. Not only monetizable, but I can have way beyond that is that I can have my life on my terms.
It's difficult, right? I think most people would agree that it's a long road. And I think this society in particular with where we are, we want things now. We don't want to wait for things. That's why we're crushed with credit card and student loan debt. We're conditioned to believe that all these things are required to just punch our ticket to the game, I guess. And what it reminded me of when you were telling your story was, you have an audio program that I want you to talk about called All In, but you've got a line in there, and I've listened to it on repeat for years, and I could probably recite it to you if I wanted to, but it's, every step you take is a step forward, even when it doesn't feel like it. And you use this really great analogy about a windy road. So for people that they're committed to going and following their passion and building that, how can they separate themselves from the societal pressure, from their inherent conditioning that says, A, that's not possible. B, you need to take care of something and you can't be irresponsible. And just the human innate, God, that's a lot of work. And that's going to take me a really long time. Sure, if I do it, it's going to be amazing, I think. But there's no proof of that. And I don't know that I want to live in misery for 5 years just to be blissfully happy. Maybe I'll just stay in a job I'm okay with. What do you say to that person?
I say that's your call. I say you get to do that, right? That's your call. That's part of the beauty of life, is you get to make that decision. But before you do, think about this. What are you going to want to say at the end of your life? If you have the opportunity, right, to look back at the end of your life, what are you going to want to say about how you used it? What are you going to want to say about how you chose in this very moment of your life? Like, let's look forward, fast forward, imagine you're on your deathbed and you look back to this exact phase, this exact moment in your life. What are you going to want to proudly be able to say, in 2018, man, I've got to tell you, I'm so psyched, that what? So like when I look back to 1990, whatever, 1 or 2, I say I'm so proud. Like if I was on my deathbed right now, I'd say I couldn't possibly be more proud about the fact that I didn't just take a job out of college, that I trusted there was some greatness that would unfold, even if it was eventual, that by following my passion, by trusting that I could really make not just a living, but a damn good one, following what I love and following my bliss. So practically speaking, you gotta answer the damn question first. You gotta answer the question, what would be amazing? If I could make a great living, if I could really make really good money, more than I would ever need, doing whatever the hell I wanted, what would that be? Now that sounds like an impractical question, but I gotta tell you, there are no more practical questions. If you're interested in living your life powerfully and happily, then this is the most practical question. It doesn't mean you're going to go quit your job now and again and that's an assumption that so many people make when I even raise the question. Like, oh, so am I supposed to just quit? No. But for God's sake, just start considering. Open up to the possibility that that you can have it the way you want it, that your job can become a vocation. And you can make as much money as you ever want doing it, but you're not going to unless first you have an answer to the question, well, what would perfect look like? And then second is start moving towards. It's one of my favorite mantras, Nick, is move towards, right? Just do anything, do anything towards having it be real. Like, so say, there's a client of mine who wants to have a retreat center. And he's wanted it for years, right? A retreat center where he does all this holistic healing stuff and coaching and yoga and all this stuff. And years ago, he picked out a space in Hawaii and he's getting he picked out an actual location and he went there recently. He took pictures of it and he committed to it. He got all in. You mentioned all in. He got all in, like meaning he isn't hoping for it. He decided this is going to be real. So he actually went to Hawaii with the intent of finding the location. And he found the spot and he took a picture. And he's starting to crush it as a coach. And right now he's making bank. Now he hasn't bought the property yet, but guess what? He will. There's no question that he will. So getting all in, I have a client who was a bankruptcy lawyer for 33 years and made a good living, very good living, but hated it, right? He's a current client. And for the last 2 years, I've been coaching him. And I asked him when we started, what is it? What's the thing? What do you want? He said, I want to be an inventor, but I don't know how I could make the same living. So over the course of 2 years, we, had him take steps. He started to, work on his inventions. And now this is the interesting point of this story. When he opened up to the possibility that he could leave his practice, which he'd done for 33 years, when he opened up to the possibility that he might be able to have his life on his terms and maybe make a living inventing stuff, because he got all these great ideas on things, like really amazing things too, like the stuff that would stop boats from sinking and medical technology and all this stuff. What happened was something he didn't think of, something he hadn't predicted, which is an alternative way to make money through his experience in bankruptcy law, which he would have never considered. And it's like involves some complicated stuff like buying other people's debt. And it's just like a really easy way to make money that he wouldn't have ever thought of if he had just stayed in survival mode. So he's closed his business. His business is closed. He's shut the doors and he's making really good money doing this simple thing that he wouldn't have thought of had he not opened up to the possibility. And that is funding his work on his inventions, which he's like getting really close to bringing his first invention to market. So bottom line, trust the organizing intelligence inherent within your passion. Answer what is your passion. Next step, just start making some moves towards it. And you'll just watch what happens.
For me, it's always been just this simple equation. I have a much, or maybe not much, I have at least a slightly bigger fear of regret than I do of failure. I got my MBA because I thought to myself, 30 years from now, am I going to regret having a master's degree? Probably not. 30 years from now, if I don't get it, will I have wondered what I could have done, how the path might have changed if I got it? Yeah, and that terrified me. So guess what I did? I jumped online at 2 a.m. and took the GMAT the next week and went to grad school. And, I'm not patient, like I told everybody in episode 0, but that's just always been my thing. I'd much rather fail, learn, figure it out, and go again than I would regret and sit and stagnate in just what is. I don't believe in that. And I think a lot of that comes from being an athlete and that mentality. A lot of it comes from working with you, but you work with a ton of really, really successful people, Chris. Like when you go to keynote at Salesforce and you're working with high level enterprise sales teams and sales executives, what is it that they have between the ears that makes them so successful that we can learn from?
Well, I'm going to answer that, and you might not be expecting this answer, but it's what you got, Nick. So we got to define success. So I define success as having your life in your terms and not regretting and like going for things, even if you fail, like swinging and missing and being psyched that you swung as opposed to, damn God, why didn't I swing at that? And that's one of the things I love about you. And that's how you were long before I ever met you. Okay. Is you don't play D1 football. Okay. Unless you got that attitude, which is I'm going to go for it. You had that attitude long before you met me. And that's one of the things I adore about you is that, you're like, this would be great. Let's go for it. This would be great. Let's go for it. This might be really amazing. I don't know what the likelihood is. Let's go for it.
To be honest, it's the reason that I have this podcast. It's that, I want to serve more. I want to help people. I want to share what I know with as many people as possible. I really don't know what's going to come from it. And I frankly don't care because I'm enjoying the hell out of doing this. I'm enjoying these types of conversations more than I could it wouldn't matter. I could have a sponsor for $1 million a year and it wouldn't make this any more fun than I have doing this just right now.
There you go. So that is a huge part of what has people be successful. And, you frame the question as like, these big executives, and I was like, who cares about big executives? I mean, the big executive status, I care about the people who might have that status. And I coach a lot of people that are very rich and they are not happy. They can't say what you just said. You just gave me goosebumps, dude. Because what you just said, you literally just gave me goosebumps and it just warms my heart to hear stuff like that, dude, because that is success. Okay. That is success. You are doing, you're letting things like money happen spontaneously as a consequence of being of service and having fun. Ding, ding, dude. There's a book written by Leo Tolstoy, who's one of Russia's greatest writers in history. And the book is entitled The Death of Ivan Ilyich. It's a story about a dude who commits himself to achieving success as defined conventionally, which is money and power. So he does. And then he gets sick, terminally ill. And he's on his deathbed. And he's confronted with the question, was my whole life wrong? I'll tell you what. we're not going to be confronted with that question, man. And nobody wants to be confronted with that question. So like, what is it that people, so I'm going to repose the question, which is, what is like really successful people have that the people who are struggling don't have? And again, success as defined by having your life on your terms, right? And one of the things is an answer to the damn question, what are your terms? What does your life look like when it's on your terms? And people don't sit down and answer that question. They're too busy surviving, right? And again, like, this isn't a question that was asked to them when they were in their teens by the guidance counselors who were throughout. When does that question get posed? What would be amazing? How would you love to use your life in the most profound of ways? Don't worry about money for now, kiddo. Just talk to me about what would be killer, what would be amazing, what would warm your heart, what would be fun, what would be cool. So first is the answer to the question. But another thing, though, is, and this is interesting, is its expectation. One of the things that I've observed about really, really successful, again, defined as having your life on your terms, people, is that they expect it to happen. They just, they don't give in to the condition. They transcend the conditioned doubt, and they have a refusal to settle. And they just truly expect to have the things that they want to have happen occur for them, and that they don't look at things, they don't look at struggle as like hard work. They just look at it as like, this is just what it takes. This is what it takes. And like you mentioned in the All-In program, it's all forward progress. What other people would consider as adversity is simply more movement towards. Like, so when somebody heard a story about Thomas Edison, he was getting interviewed after the light bulb came out, and the interviewer said, so gosh, you failed 1,000 times, man. How did you feel about that? And Edison said, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you mean. I didn't fail 1,000 times. He said, it took 1,000 efforts, it took 1,000 swings to figure it out. And that's just the way it needed to. Every single one that didn't work was information for me that was useful for me to make more, to get better, to learn, to discover what would work. So it's all forward progress.
Yep. I've heard that quote reframed, paraphrased really. And Edison's reported to have said, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. And it's that kind of mentality.
Yeah. It's all forward progress. When I'm moving towards my passion, it's all forward progress. So successful people don't interpret things as failure, right? There's no such thing as failure. Okay. So here's a great takeaway for like the people that, that are successful. They have the attitude, there's no such thing as failure. There are only results. And I love all results, right? So there's two categories of results. I get what I want, or I didn't. The first category, when I get what I want, it's valuable for obvious reasons. I get to celebrate that. When I don't get what I want, it's equally valuable in a very distinct way, which is, this is where I get to learn. This is where I get to grow. I get to create something out of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you keep talking about things that are in the All-In program. I'm going to put it in the show notes. I encourage you, if you're listening and you're picking up what Chris is putting down here, that is a program you have to listen to. It's available in an audio file. And Chris, you actually have some exciting news about that program, if you want to share that real quick.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So just yesterday, I completed the recording for the course. I've coursified, if that's a verb, the All-In audio course. So the audio course itself is, the audio program, like the CD or the MP3, is about an hour long. I've just taken it and opened it up. I've converted it into an online digital course that's going to be available any minute now. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
That's amazing. I'm going to put that in the show notes. I encourage you guys to check it out along with Chris's information. We're going to play a little segment called Rapid Fire with Chris Dorris right after this. Stay right there.
The Job Lab is brought to you by Mid-America Careers, the Midwest Career Network. Quickly search millions of jobs with a single click. Create alerts so you're the first to know when a great new job is posted. Research exciting new career opportunities, and more. No matter where you are in your professional journey, Mid-America Careers can help. Visit midamericacareers.com to claim your free account today.
All right, welcome back. Chris, are you ready to play Rapid Fire for the very first time?
Hell yeah, let's do it, man.
What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
Well, actually, my car is a rolling library of like self-help stuff. So I think about whatever I'm listening to. At the moment, it's a dude named Alan Watts.
What's your advice for your previous boss?
Oh my God, my previous boss, I haven't had a boss since like 1994. So I would say lighten up.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Okay, hopefully I never grow up, but if I have to, I want to be a kicker for the Eagles.
You can dream, my friend. You can dream. What inspires you?
You know what inspires me is, when I get, like just this morning, I got a really beautiful message from someone who's on my list, getting my morning messages that I send out, the daily dose. And when they say, this changed my day, please don't ever stop doing this, stuff is great. That just, it warms my heart. That is an eternal source of inspiration.
What is your biggest fear?
Being buried alive in a box. There's a story behind that. It's kind
That's specific. That's specific.
If you Google this, seriously, this is really funny and also really relevant. Just Google Bob Newhart, stop it. You'll watch a little Comedy Central segment, and it's absolutely hilarious and poignant.
We'll save you the time. We'll put it in the show notes.
All right, right on. Bob Hart. Yeah, perfect. Cool.
Who do you admire the most?
Right now, I'm thinking people like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, and I'll tell you why. It's not because they have extreme wealth. It's because of what they do with it.
Which celebrity annoys you the most?
Oh, what a fun question, because no one annoys me. Like, no one has the power to annoy me. No one has the power to annoy. No one can annoy anyone else. But to play with it, I would say the person in the world who behaves so consistently in ways that have it easy for me to think so poorly that I get annoyed would be our president.
This is how I know you're so many levels above me from your mental clarity, because I get annoyed 25 times before noon every single day with everyone from my kids to the traffic to everything. So I am trying really hard.
That's not where I thought you were going with that. Roger that.
Last one. You get to share a drink or a meal with anyone in history, dead or alive. Who is it and why?
Yeah, that's an easy one. That would be my adoptive father, who I mentioned in our talk, died when I was 9. I didn't get to know him. And just this very morning, I read an article that was written about my sister, who's a professor at Villanova. And my dad went to Villanova, and so did my niece and nephew. So there's an article about my dad, my sister, and my niece, 3 generations of Villanova grads. And I learned more about him through the article that came out. And I just loved, he was an amazing man who brought celebration. He brought celebration, and he was super successful. And that's just like the most beautiful combination possible to me. So I wish I could have a long dinner with that man.
So Chris, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your stories. We're going to link to the All In program. We're going to link to the course if it's available by the time this launches. But for our audience, what's your number one parting piece of advice, and how can we follow you if for the listeners that have really dug what you're doing?
Okay, so my parting piece of advice would be to schedule, like right now, unless you're driving, as soon as you can, literally schedule an hour of sacred time, right, where you're unplugged with a pad of paper and a pen. Right? Don't do it on a computer. Go somewhere cool, be totally infinitely unplugged and undistracted, and answer the question, how do I most profoundly want to use the rest of my life? And then after you've completed that, then just do anything, no matter how small, just any step, take any step towards that whatsoever. And then anybody that wants to look into more of my work or get on my email list or follow my blog or get the daily dose, then that's easy. Just go to my homepage, my website, which is Christopher Dorris, which is DORRIS, ChristopherDorris.com, and it's all right there.
We'll throw that information in the show notes as well. Chris, it's always a pleasure, my friend. I learn something every time I talk to you. The things that you inspire me to think about and challenge in our conditioning and just in the way that we look at the world is really impactful and really powerful. It's why I wanted you to be guest number 1 on the Job Lab. And on behalf of all of our listeners, thanks for spending so much time with us today.
Thank you, brother. I totally appreciate the invite, man.
Talk to you soon. And there you have it, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Chris Dorris. What a smart dude, right? Next week on episode 2, I'm going to chat with a Fortune 500 talent acquisition leader about what it takes to make it in the corporate world today. Whether you're looking to grow inside your company, make a move to a new job, or maybe just really want to understand how all this crazy HR stuff really works, you definitely don't want to miss that show. As a reminder, you can always email me or tweet me your questions. I'd love your feedback. You need to know how I'm doing, right? We're only an episode and a half, 2 episodes in. I also really want to know what questions I can ask to help provide some of the answers to the challenges that you've been struggling with in your unique situation, but haven't yet been able to figure out how to solve on your own. If you haven't, please subscribe to the show. Make sure that you never miss an episode. Guests like Chris, the stuff that he talked about today, the advice he gave, hopefully some of you at least got an aha or two. Those are things you don't want to miss. And if you like what you're hearing, please consider giving us a 5-star review and leave a review for us on iTunes. And just to tie a bow around what I thought was just an incredible chat with Chris, I want to remind you to challenge your conditioned beliefs. And think about his question just one more time. How do you most profoundly want to use the rest of your life? If your answer varies at all from what you're doing today, take a step, any size step, towards living your life and your career on your terms, because you deserve it. You absolutely can do it. And this show is going to be here to keep you motivated and inspired and encouraged as you go. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.
You've been listening to The Job Lab with your host, Nick Murphy. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes.